Hello and welcome to another episode of the John and Adam Show. Quite excited today because we have a special guest. But before I go that far, I just want to say hello, Adam. How you doing?
Hey there, everyone.
And we also have a special guest, Doug from DJP Video. Doug Johnson, you probably know on YouTube. But I'm guessing if you haven't seen his channel before, Doug, maybe you could say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate that a lot. So yeah, I do a channel on YouTube about to video production related stuff, and I kind of take it one step above where a lot of the other channels do. A lot of them, a lot of the channels like focus on small productions, and I kind of do things that are just like one step up. And I also do a deep dives into sort of the technology and how it works and that kind of thing. So any geeks out there in the video world would probably enjoy my content.
That's why I find it, I think, just geeking out on the big production stuff that you do. And you offer a lot of that production services to clients as well, right? And you have a
Oh
trailer
yeah.
that you're sitting in right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this where I'm shooting right now. This is actually my video production trailer. I pull this to a location and uh, fire it up, and, power it, and then run fiber cables to cameras. And this is the production facility right on wheels. And so I don't have to rewire everything and test it everything. Every time I get onto site, it's all ready to go.
So not only do you talk about event production stuff and provide client services, don't you also have a product that you sell?
I do, yeah. So this video thing is actually kind of more of a hobby for me than anything else. My day job is in software. And as part of building up my video production side business, I needed a piece of software to help me plan the events and hire crew and keep track of equipment and all that kind of stuff. And so I built a website, and eventually people started to hear about it and thought it was cool. So I decided to make it available. The site is called crewaxis.com, crewaxis.com. And yeah, anybody can sign up for it. And it's got tools for every aspect of running a video production business from small to large.
So the reason we want to chat with you specifically today, Doug, I think, is because you have a piece of gear on your desk that I was quite keen on hearing a little bit about. What do you have there, and tell us a little bit about it?
Okay, so this here in front of me is brand new product from Blackmagic. This is the ATEM 1ME Constellation 4K. The key being the 4K, because they've had HD version of this for a couple of years, I think now, but they finally released the 4K one here about a month ago.
Is that something that you have been hearing from clients that they want to see you do 4K work, or why would you make the purchase into the 4K world?
Well, for me personally, it's more about, well, I mean, I offer a YouTube channel where I talk about video production, how to do that kind of thing. And some of my clients actually find me that way. And so this was being able to produce in 4K for my channel was important to make sure I'm putting the message out there that, hey, I'm technically competent here. I've got the right tools to do the job in a professional manner. But in terms of which clients actually ask me to shoot in 4K, that's been exceptionally rare. I can only think of one client that I've worked for a handful of times that actually wanted the recordings in 4K, but they didn't want to live switch in 4K. We still live switched in HD. So the 4K has been more for my channel than it has been for the clients that are paying me to come and work for them.
So your channel, 4K workflow, is that from start to finish, all your cameras in 4K, all your sort of screen captures in 4K, everything? Tell me a bit about that workflow.
Yeah, so when I started to build this trailer, at the time, going 4K, at least 30 frames per second in 4K anyway, was not really much of an additional investment over just doing HD. And so everything that I bought for the trailer from the get-go was capable of doing 4K at up to 30 frames per second. Cameras, all the converters to get video out of computers into the switcher, and all the monitors, everything in the trailer is 4K. And so it's completely natural to shoot that way, because everything that I have in the entire production workflow is actually 4K. It's been nice to have.
And you're delivering all these YouTube videos in 4K, and I don't know if you look into stats and seeing people watching in 4K, or is it more just to have that extra overhead if you need it?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I'm not just to ensure that any potential client would see that, hey, I'm producing the best quality content I can, but also in editing, that gives me a lot of flexibility to be able to crop in and on a shot and not lose detail. And I do that a lot, actually. When I'm doing close-ups of things on the desk here, for example, it's really nice to be able to crop in and actually still have that image retain high quality, which is something that's a little harder to do when you're shooting an HD workflow. You're a little more limited in how much that cropping you can do before the image really starts to break down a lot. And that extra detail in 4K sure makes a big difference that way.
Yeah, and I think you're doing something that I really like to do, which is like take your equipment and use it in your own time and push it to its sort of outer limit. And that
Mhm.
way, if someone comes along and asks you to do exactly that for them for a paid reason, then you know
Mhm.
confidently that you have the cameras, but you also have a bunch of like switchers that you might need, or scalers or anything else in the chain. You happen to have tested that by accident at home making a video, and now you know that you don't have to run out the day before a job and buy a bunch more converters, or maybe just even like 12G cables that you didn't have before, or whatever it is. You can be fairly confident when you get there that at least you've tried it in that mode and you're not switching it into 4K mode for the first time on a job site.
Very much so. As I'm sure you know, John, having worked for clients out in the field, like you don't want to be testing a piece of equipment for the first time when you're working for a client that's paying you to do a video production for them. You don't want to find out then that something is not working the way that you intend for it to do. And so by having all this stuff and using it for my own YouTube channel and just playing with it besides that as well, I become very familiar with the stuff before I'm even willing to use it for a client job. And having the YouTube channel sure makes that a lot easier.
And then lastly, on all this 4K overhead, all the footage. Imagine coming away from a show with all the ISOs. If you record on cameras in 4K, it's just so
Mhm.
much more stuff to manage. Do you have the capacity for all that right now? How are you managing all that data?
I actually have a dedicated server here in the trailer, and it's got hard drives in a RAID array and 10 gig networking going into that machine. And so, yeah, when I pull all the cards and from both cameras and recorders and copy them to the computer, yeah, I've got plenty of space for that. But it still takes a while, even with fast drives and fast card readers and everything. It's just an awful lot of data. And as for anybody who watches my channel, they would have seen that recently I started adopting a workflow where I record directly to SSDs, um, or a file share on the computer instead of going through cards wherever possible, and that just reduces that amount of time acquiring, copying footage that much more. But it can be a lot. I mean, you're talking about terabytes per day when you're shooting that kind of a workflow.
Yeah, terabytes per day. So I wanted to ask a question about the internet bandwidth that you have at your place. I know,
Mhm.
John, you're on a 4G connection, and here in where I live in the Bay Area, I have a Comcast Xfinity, which has a
Mhm.
1 terabyte per month data cap. And I just got the text message from Xfinity like a few days ago saying I'm at 90%. So for the next 2 days, I'm like, don't do anything on the internet. Don't upload anything to Dropbox because I'll hit overage fees. So tell us a little bit more about what you have coming into this trailer.
Where I'm at, I'm actually pretty fortunate that fiber is almost ubiquitous. So I have gigabit symmetric fiber coming into my home and the last place I lived as well. Like it's very easy to get here. And the community I'm currently in, it's actually the city that provides that, and so it's actually quite affordable as well. But yeah, it's symmetric gigabit. I mean, there's literally a fiber line that comes up to the side of my house and plugs into my network, and yeah, it's just super fast and super reliable. And when I do speed tests, I get like 0 or 1 millisecond ping times and transfer rates that are upwards of a gigabit per second constantly. I mean, that's just matter of course. It's very normal. So certainly super lucky that way for sure.
I'm very jealous of that.
Same. Adam, question for you. Do you do anything in 4K, any of your YouTube videos or any content like that?
I do not. I'm an all HD workflow. Some of my equipment is capable of doing 4K, but again, with the internet speeds that I have and the equipment that I have, I'm just sticking with HD for now.
Sounds about right. I've tinkered with 4K stuff, especially like Doug, you mentioned the cropping in. It's really nice for shooting YouTube videos, and you accidentally do an overhead shot that's way too far away from the buttons you're showing. It is nice to have that extra level of detail. But these days, I'm running everything through the ATEM Mini Pro and just sticking with HD. It's doing okay for now, I think.
One thing that people don't necessarily think about with these 4K switchers, but even when you shoot in HD, you run them in HD, the multi-view output is in 4K. So all those reduced size windows, you're seeing those in a lot more detail than you see on the HD versions of the switcher. So even if you're not necessarily shooting in 4K, having a 4K switcher does give you that advantage.
You have the 1ME version, right? Is that had you any thought about going for the other models in the line? The 8K version, maybe?
The 8K is probably not something I'm going to be interested in. I
No.
mean, they have the 4K version of that one, which basically does all the same things, just doesn't have the 8K feature. But that I actually will be at some point getting that 4ME Constellation 4K for the trailer here. Right now, I'm still running an older 2ME Production Studio 4K from 2016 or whatever year that was. I got it in 2016, so it must be older than that. But so at some point I will be doing that upgrade here in the trailer. But this one I actually bought for my basement studio. I'm someone who doesn't like editing video very much. And so I try to live switch everything that I do, like all the videos I do for my YouTube channel, whenever possible, I will live switch it. And that keeps the editing time to a minimum. And getting this switcher was something that made that possible. Previously, I didn't have a 4K switcher that I could put in my basement studio, and this finally allowed me to do that. So even though it doesn't have all the same features as some of the other ones, it does enough in order to make it work for that particular case.
I'm a fan of trying my best, especially with the YouTube videos, just to do it live as much as possible. And Adam, I know that you do that stuff too. It makes it a lot easier, right?
It definitely does. The less editing I have to do in Final Cut, the happier I am. Although it is sometimes unavoidable. If you flub something, you have to go into Final Cut and make a few little edits. But I like to keep things in camera and on, in the file that I produce as much as possible.
The way I shoot videos here on my channel, I don't have scripts. Like I barely even have notes as to what I want to say. So when I'm shooting a video for my channel, I quite literally grab whatever equipment I'm going to be talking about, throw it down on the desk and hit record and just start talking. But inevitably that means there's going to be a few edits in post, but hopefully with the ability to live switch that I'm able to make that a little more seamless and the editing a little bit more clean on those.
It's the same as whenever you only have to make a few edits afterwards. It's a lot less of a, daunting task than pulling SD cards out of 4 different cameras and loading in all the footage and then realizing, something didn't record right on this camera, I'm out of focus here, blah blah blah. So it's super easy just to load it in there and make a few small changes if you really have to.
Yeah, a question that I had is how many takes on average would you say one of your videos you have to go through to produce one of your videos? I would say, I'll start first. I try to do everything in one take, again, live switch, and I would say maybe like 5 to 8 takes.
Been a while since I made a solid video, but I think probably like 2 to 3. But I do tend to, when I used to make them, I do script them out heavily, and I had my HyperDeck Studio prompter up, reading that for the A roll as much as possible. So I think I got it down to 2 or 3 takes. Since I usually would write the script like right before I would shoot, so it was fresh in my head. But in the early days, it was a lot more than that. You, Doug?
You guys are going to hate me for this. Most of the time, it's a single take, with a couple of minor issues where I like back up maybe a sentence or two and like just try another approach for something. But yeah, for the most part, it's just single take.
I'd rather it be that way, so I think I should probably move more towards that. Just I feel like whenever you're filming the videos, you think it matters and you need to get the line perfect, but in reality, once it's edited and out there, it's fine if it feels, unscripted and a little bit looser, I think.
A lot of it comes down to the expectations of your viewers for your channel. If you've always done the perfect edit every time, it feels a little odd to change that. But for me, I've always had the same kind of workflow where there's going to be some mistakes in there, and I leave them in, and that's okay. So I think people are just used to that, and then it's okay. So
I'm going to speed up my takes then in the future. So having watched you guys, I'm going to script my things on the teleprompter. I'm just going to do it all in one take.
Or live, and then you don't get an option.
Oh, yeah. Do it live. So Doug, I see in a lot of your videos, and I see in the video right now, you have a lot of control surfaces and buttons and stream decks and X keys and things like that. Tell us your journey towards key, control surface nirvana.
all right. So, I mean, some of it just has to do with the fact that a lot of this equipment is expensive. So you go back several years ago when I was building this trailer, well, the budget doesn't go as far as you expect that it's going to. And I was originally going to be getting one of Blackmagic's older 2ME control surfaces that they had, but it was $15,000, and I ended up spending the money that I was going to go towards that on just other random stuff in order to make the trailer work. So I was kind of left without a proper control surface which meant I had to find another solution. And that sort of led me to X Keys. It's a product from a company called PI Engineering. And it's just a USB controller. And so you use that in conjunction with a piece of software. Found a piece of software at the time called Just Macros. And that workflow worked really well for me because as a software developer, that tool felt very much at home for me because the way that it works is like whenever time you press a button, you can have it control features directly, but it's really more suited towards writing code. So it uses the Lua programming language. And so whenever I press a button on there, I type or run some Lua code on there to do whatever I wanted it to do. And that works pretty well. You know, the X Keys controllers are a lot less expensive than the Blackmagic native controllers, and I could do whatever I wanted, which is something that I haven't seen in any other tool even since then. Unfortunately, Just Macros software got abandoned, and it doesn't even work with the current version of the ATEM software, version 9. And so I've had to come up with other solutions for things. But I always did want to get one of the native Blackmagic control surfaces like what I have behind me. And a year ago, I had an opportunity to get one. I just did it, and been super glad that I did that. It's been super nice to have, and I use it not only here with my trailer, but I also use it with my fly pack as well. Which these days I'm doing more with my fly pack than I do with my trailer. A lot of smaller events where a trailer just wouldn't make a lot of sense. But having that control surface that works with either one of those switchers has just been super nice. And it's also impressive to the clients too when you show up and you got a big massive piece of gear like that with the flashing lights and screens and whatever. People like to see that. They like to feel like they're getting their money's worth when they hire you. So having that's been great. But I've also tried to augment that with other solutions as well. So, I've got a couple of Stream Decks. I don't know if you can see those in my shot or not, but yeah, I've got a couple of Stream Decks. I got the XL. I've got the newer Plus in there. I've got a bunch of just the regular Stream Decks as well, hidden throughout the trailer. And I use those not necessarily for controlling the switcher so much, but for controlling everything else in the trailer, the intercom system, video routing, recorders, all that kind of thing. And so just having a bunch of different solutions simultaneously allows me to do a lot of stuff that any one solution doesn't necessarily allow either. So yeah, I just kind of landed in a place where I'm incorporating a bunch of different tools in order to do everything that I need to do.
On that note, real quick, that I think from the start using ATEMs, I wanted to get towards like getting the big hardware panel, since it makes sense to have that with the ATEMs, and having used them a bunch over the last few years. I've never actually bought one myself, but many of the people that I work for have them. And what I realized over time is like, yes, it is great to have to control the ATEM, but you want to do three things at once and you don't want to build a little macro, then still having, I just happen to find my X keys sitting at arm's reach here. Having those or like the Stream Decks, it's still a great idea to have one nearby so you can punch a few different commands at the same time. I also have this not plugged in and barely ever used, but sitting here in front of me, the Stream Deck with the knobs. And it's like show off your X keys day, Doug. That's quite the panel you have there.
Yeah, this is the 128 key panel, and this is what I used instead of the Blackmagic hardware panel for a long time, for multiple years. I think I got this back in 2018, and I got this panel in 2023. So more than 5 years of switching using just this. So yeah, I mean, it can absolutely be made to work, but having dedicated controls that are meant for that specific purpose, and T-bars and screens showing you what's on your inputs and ways to navigate menus and things like that. It's so much nicer than working with this. So even though this works, it's not the ideal solution.
And if you are just starting out, or if someone who's watching this video is just starting out, what would you recommend they start using?
If you can afford the Blackmagic advanced panels, I would really try to do that. But having the new micro panel coming out here within the next little while, that's going to be a great solution for a lot of people as well, because it's a fraction of the price. The advanced panels start at a little over $3,000, and this new micro panel that's coming out is like $675, I think, or something like that. So it's under $700, and it's going to give you most of that functionality that you need, and at a fraction of the cost. So it's a great starting place. But eventually, I think everybody, if they're doing this professionally, it's something you're getting paid for, whatever. The advanced hardware panels are really hard to beat. There's not really anything else out there that's quite as convenient for just controlling the switcher.
And then as a developer myself of a software-based control surface,
Mhm.
what is your take on the, touch screens or just doing it on the computer?
When your workflow allows you to do that, that's a great solution. For me personally, that would be a great thing to augment what I'm doing somewhere else. For example, I have used your Mix Effect software for its super source animation thing when I can't use my own solution for that. It's a great augmenting solution for controlling an ATEM. When it comes down to working in the heat of the moment, and something starts happening that you're not anticipating, you need to very quickly get to a specific input. You don't want to be scrolling or navigating through menus in order to get directly to the button to control that. And so having a hardware control panel, and then not just a hardware control panel, but one that has dedicated buttons. And that's one of my issues with a lot of the Stream Deck based solutions. Like you're navigating through multiple pages to find what you need. And heat of the moment, your brain might not register like exactly what it takes to get there, or it might take too long to navigate to the right page or whatever. So having a dedicated hardware button for anything that you need to do is something that's going to be essential in the heat of the moment. But you've got a fantastic product, Adam. I've recommended it to a lot of different people, and for someone who is able to utilize a touchscreen environment, like it's the best thing that's out there.
Great. And then have you thought about Apple Vision Pro or VR headsets where all your control surfaces just appear in front of you and you can just like find them exactly where they are because you place them where they are and they have every button that you need and you just look and pinch.
That certainly would be kind of a nerd fantasy, wouldn't it? But it does kind of come back to having a physical button that you can reach out to and just press. A lot of times, like you're having to do some of this by feel. Like you're having to focus your attention on screen in front of you. You can't look down or whatever. So just being able to just reach and do things with tactile feedback is kind of irreplaceable.
I would go so far to say like it really does make sense for if you're someone like me who works with a lot of different AV companies on all sorts of equipment. Really, it really helps if they all have the same, for example, Blackmagic panel that we can all use consistently across jobs and across companies, because even just setting up the Stream Deck, people have their own ways of configuring Companion. Program goes on page 2 and preview on page 1, or whatever way they decide to set it up. Like you said, Doug, just knowing that a physical button is underneath my fingers and it is a physical button that does exactly what I think it's going to do in the position that I think it's going to do really helps compared to a random Stream Deck Companion configuration, or even the way someone has used a touchscreen. Maybe they've built their own interface on that, or maybe it's Mix Effect or something like that. It's a very different feeling whenever in the heat of the moment, as you said, you just need to cut to this camera and you need to know where to press confidently.
And you want to be in a situation where you're not having to think about that. Like you got so many other things that's going on, especially, working as a technical director, my focus needs to be on what the camera operators are doing. I don't want to have to be thinking about how to run my gear. And just after spending just a little bit of time with the advanced hardware panel, you just become used to it. It becomes second nature, muscle memory, so to speak, right? So you're just operating it without thinking about what you're doing. And that makes such a big difference when you're really trying to do the best job that you can.
Do you see the AI taking over the technical director and kind of downloading your brain into an LLM that knows exactly how you like to cut and let that take over? Do you see that somehow in the future?
Probably at some point, yeah. I mean, things are certainly moving that direction. There's a lot of cues that you can use too. Like, for example, if you're doing something like this where you've got 3 people, and you can just listen to the audio, see who's talking, and then switch to that camera automatically. But AI can certainly be used to supplement a lot of that. I'm not sure that we're going to be anywhere near the point where AI is able to make some of the same creative decisions that we make as humans. When I'm technical directing, I like to try to tell a story with what I'm doing. It's not just following who's talking. I'm trying to lead the viewer along the journey as well. And it's probably going to be a bit before AI has the resources, the knowledge, the experience to know how to do that kind of thing. So and we're probably not in any sort of danger of TDs being replaced just yet, but down the road, I can see where that could be a little more automated than what it is now.
Adam, have you managed to or thought about including AI in some way into Mix Effect?
I've been thinking about it, but I don't have a particular feature that I want to add just yet. So I do have a video follows audio feature, which does analyze the kind of the decibel levels that are coming in each audio input. So I can do kind of switching based on who's talking, but it's all based on just a value, a threshold that the audio goes over or below.
As much as this industry is technical, there is an artistic side to it as well, and that's where computers have a harder time, right? So the computer is not going to know how to make an artistic decision. It can make great technical decisions, but in terms of the art of producing video, it's going to be lacking a little bit there.
So looking ahead then, Doug, what is next for the trailer or the channel, or what can we expect from you in the next few months?
Since I just got this switcher, I'm going to be cranking out a lot more videos from my home basement studio, and that's going to make it a lot easier to produce videos a lot more quickly. When I produce out of my trailer, I have to do a lot more advanced preparation, thinking about what I'm going to be shooting ahead of time. Got to run the air conditioner for a few hours, and then I can only be shooting for an hour at a time. Otherwise, it gets too hot. But having the basement studio all set up and ready to go means I can just pop in there anytime and just start shooting a video. And like since I got this switcher, I've shot 3 videos in those 2 weeks, and got plans for a lot more. So having this is just going to allow me to crank out a lot more content that way. In terms of what DJP's got going on, we're starting to get into the busy summer season. We've got big jumper rope competition coming up, and a flag ceremony, and forget what else is like. Yeah, it's kind of back to back to back every weekend. There's something going on, and just kind of the way this time of year is.
And you mentioned your Crew Access website. Where else can we reach you on the internet?
My YouTube channel is DJP Video, or it's actually spelled out Doug Johnson Productions for the full name, but if you're searching by the alias, it's DJP_video. And I mean, I have social accounts elsewhere, but I don't necessarily use them, so I'm not sure that promoting them here would be such a great idea. But my website, if you wanted to learn more about my company and what we do, it's djprod.biz.
And on that note, Doug, you have been shooting some behind the scenes stuff of your studio and your house, which is something I really wanted to know more about ever since you mentioned it a while ago. Do you have something for us to see, right?
I just threw together a quick 10-minute video where I just sort of walked around and showed you guys what's there. So
roll VT.
All right, take a quick gander in the studio. It doesn't look like much with the overhead light on, but this is kind of what we got. So flip around here, you can see from point of view of when I'm shooting. So got main camera there, another camera over here, camera up top, and then I have this other little guy over here on a stand that I can move around for inset, B-roll, that kind of stuff. But so yeah, I just sit here on a stool talking to camera. Got my computer display over here, and then a nice big 55-inch monitor, TV over here to monitor what's going on with the various video sources. It looks a little weird with all the lights off, so let's go over here and flip the actual room studio lights on and the overhead light off. This will take a minute to power up. I'll show you guys what this actually looks like here in a second. Alright, so yeah, this is a little more like it. So nice 4-foot wide softbox over here, 2-foot wide softbox, and this one's practically right in my face when I'm sitting here shooting. But yeah, the audio mixer is here because I'm shooting a video about audio, not because I actually mix my own audio. I really only do run audio into camera in here. So we've got the new Shure SM7DB microphone here, and that just runs into camera. Plugs in center camera here, and then I use the ATEM to mix that. Alright, and then like I say, and then I got so I should probably cover what the cameras are. So this one is a Sony PXW Z90V. This one over here is Sony it's the NX80. Forget the HXR. Yeah, HXR NX80. These are both cameras in the same family. Big difference is this one only has HDMI output. This one has SDI. And then up top, that's a Sony FDR AX700. So also the same family. It's the lower end of them. That one doesn't have XLR inputs and only has HDMI in output. But otherwise, those cameras are basically all the same. 4K, HDR capable, although I haven't used that. And this one over here, I forget the exact model number. It's Sony's newest vlogging camera, little vlogging camera. It has a APS-C style screen, or a sensor on it. But, so yeah, I'm still getting this figured out. Right now I've got an X-Keys 40 key panel right here that's controlling it. I'm going through central control right now, trying it out, see how that's going to go. Not as powerful as Companion, but I trust the stability more. And then just a wireless keyboard and mouse. The actual computer for this is down here. Intel Nook. This one's an 11th gen, so it's not super new, but it's not that old either. So what I did in terms of cameras, so I decided not to use tripods because this room is not that big. So I use microphone stands, and they're the kind of the quick release, so I can just squeeze the trigger and that loosens it up. And then I've got a ball head on there and then a quick release plate underneath the camera. So that allows me to adjust position and height pretty easily. The downside is that the cameras don't really get much lower than what you're seeing here, but for what I'm doing, it's actually alright. So that's what I did for all the cameras. And there's another couple of stands in the back there. Those are actually set up for lights as well. So, but speaking of lights, you already saw the two big soft boxes. But what else I've done here, I've got light fixtures on the ceiling. So let me dial down the exposure so you can get a better idea what's going on with those. It's still blown out, but so this one right here illuminates this accent wall. I've got this purple one which illuminates this half of the wall. White one for hair lights, and then this blue one illuminates this half of the wall. And that's all I have set up at the moment. I do have more. I keep other lights down here on the floor. They're out of shot, you can't tell. There's a 300 watt in the gray case and then a 60 watt on top. And this another softbox. And then this one right here in the case is another one of those color ones. These color ones, of course, are fully configurable. I can put whatever color I want. And so yeah, there's 3 of those that are put up there and turned on at the moment. Another one there, and I've got another one in the storage closet next door. And over, so anyway, I should over here, that's just a gray wall. So I just went with, I'm having trouble focusing. So I went with a flat paint in the most neutral gray that I could come up with. That way I could choose whatever color I wanted, and it wouldn't be tainted. The white color of the light wouldn't be tainted by the color of the wall. So that's the story there. And then over here, I've got a sound blanket. But in front of the sound blanket, pull down green screen. And I haven't used that for any of my videos yet, but it's there and ready to go. Alright, and then over here, behind the TV, well, you'll be able to see this. Turn up the gain. So, acoustic tiles on the wall there. And I'm going to do that for the rest of this wall, and even spill over onto this other adjacent wall. And I haven't purchased the rest of them, but I'm going to start with this dark blue color, which is actually darker than it looks on camera, and then gradually fade over to a gray, and then that will be able to be used as a backdrop. So the idea is, depending on what I want to shoot, I can either go with this accent wall, which is real wood, by the way, or solid color, or green screen, or the acoustic tile over here, or shoot into a corner and get a combination of multiple. So anyway, that's first look at the studio. I wired the room so that I can just plug the cameras directly into the wall. So SDI right there, and then get USB power for converters or whatever. So the idea is HDMI coming out of the cameras, going to Blackmagic converters, and then SDI and USB going to the wall. So I don't have to deal with power adapters. I don't have to deal with any of that kind of nonsense. The same sort of thing. So there's an HDMI coming out of the back of there, gray cable coming down to converters. I'm using bidirectional where it makes sense, and then just HDMI to SDI elsewhere. So this one right here comes down from the ceiling, that's overhead, and this one over here is for the center cam. And then it's the same sort of deal over here. So an HDMI to SDI adapter for that camera right there. So, and then there are other, like there's SDI Ethernet there, same thing here on the back, and then there's a couple behind the blanket over here as well. So that gives me the ability to just plug in. I don't have to drape cables absolutely everywhere, but having Ethernet and SDI everywhere. Oh, by the way, I also have SDI run up here. I just haven't connected it yet for the overhead camera, so that's still yet to happen. But anyway, so that's the studio. So I'll let you see what's going on with the wires on the other end. So those actually travel through this white PVC pipe right here and then come down into this room, which is going to be the recording studio at some point. But yeah, so the cables come out here. And right now, because I don't have the desk and the equipment rack, I just took a wall mount rack and put my ATEM, a web presenter, and 2 HyperDecks in the rack there. And then I also have a multi-view 4 to allow me to monitor the monitor outputs on these 3 devices plus 1 aux. And then 10 gig fiber going to my main network throughout the house, and then each of the devices of course has a network connection there. And the nice thing about having 10 gig here is that I can record to these 2 recorders, send that footage over my network to the computer where I edit, which is also on 10 gig. And I can record in 4K, and both of these have that go over to the computer that I edit on. And it's ready to go, like as soon as I'm ready, as soon as I finish recording. So notice there's no SD cards. Hit record. It's going directly to my editing machine. So super handy.
I have a million questions. I was going to ask about the SDI on the wall, but you covered that. Oh, that's great. Did you pull all that apart so you could put it on your desk for right now for this recording?
I did, yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's
I was thinking
no problem.
How do you, when you reconfigure the room to like, I'm going to shoot on green screen, how do you move the monitors and the desks and all the equipment? Because it looked, even though like you said, the cameras are on mic stands, everything else seemed pretty fixed. Are they on wheels or what?
The desk is actually a folding table, so that moves out of the way really easily. And then the 2 monitors for the computer, and then the bigger TV, those are just on stands. They're not attached to the wall, so I can just move those around. The 55-inch TV is kind of overkill. It's one I had laying around, so I just decided to use it. But in the long term, I'll probably go with something a little smaller, a little easier to manipulate in that space. But the lighting moves around pretty easily too. I mean, it's just hung from the ceiling. And as I find new locations where I need to install lights, I just throw baby pins up on the ceiling and leave them there. And so I could reconfigure and just take them down and put them up wherever they need to be pretty easily, pretty quickly.
We're gonna have to put it all back together again then after this recording, I suppose.
Not a big deal. I mean, they've got the 10 inputs and 5 outputs, and that's about it. So it'd take me a couple of minutes is all. Not a big deal.
I'm assuming they were all labeled easily enough, right?
Well, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I would be surprised otherwise.
And how long did it take you to make this office, this basement studio of yours?
I really only had weekends to work on it. So once I finally buckled down and said, I'm going to do this, it was probably 8 to 10 weeks. A lot of that was because, you do a coat of mud to, the spackling or whatever on the wall, and have to wait for that to dry before you can sand and do the next coat. So multiple weeks went by just in that process alone. And then the painting too. So, 8 to 10 weeks is realistic.
And what's your plan for the recording studio that you mentioned during the video?
I've noticed that there is an opening in the market in this area. There's a lot of filmmaking that takes place in Utah. I'm not sure why it's necessarily taken off that way, but we have a lot of people who make films here, and I've noticed that there are not a lot of post-production facilities for audio in the area. So that's been going to be my focus. So the intention is to basically be set up for Dolby Atmos mastering, and do full 9.4.6 surround with that. And that'll be kind of a unique thing that nobody else in my area is doing. I can charge a pretty decent rate for people to come in and just use the studio for mastering. But it's also going to be set up for recording as well. There's going to be 2 ISO booths in there, and then the other room that I haven't mentioned for the basement is going to be a home theater. But that's also going to double as just a general recording area as well. So if you need somebody to come in, they got their drums or their guitar or whatever, they can be set up in there. And all these rooms are going to be fully interconnected and be able to send signals from any room to any other room. And so be able to use the studio area to act as a control room, and then the home theater to act as the general recording booth. And then if there's any video involved, the little YouTube studio room can serve that purpose as well.
Do you see yourself using an Ultimat and doing green screen with Unreal Engine for virtual sets?
I probably won't get into the Unreal Engine aspect of that, but yes, I've already invested in the Ultimat. I've already spent some time learning how to use that, and I've even used that for a client event a couple weeks ago. But yes, I very much intend for that to be a real-time production kind of thing, just with fixed cameras rather than dealing with the whole motion tracking and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thanks a bunch, Doug, for taking all our questions and all your answers. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing more on that home studio as well. So do post more videos on that. I hope you'll have some more cool gear, and maybe you'll come back on again and talk to us about that in the future. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Excellent. Thanks to Adam as well. I guess we'll do this again in a few more weeks and have another topic. We'll see what happens, right?
That's right. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down in the comments below.
And with that, thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Thanks again, Doug.